guess it's regularly used. It's not
Okay.
Okay, so, do you want to start recording?
Yeah. I'll just move the camera. You're ready to go.
Okay,
Ellie.
so, today I wanted to discuss a couple of things. I want to finish up this information sheet to get that flip chart for the emergency plan. So the thing that I want to go through today is, Clyde had a very simple system, I'll refer you back to that, of what the incident categories would be, and we have several. So severe weather, communications failure, transportation emergency, where there's a train derailment or Route 6 and 20 are simultaneously closed. Supply chain disruption, so that's food scarcity, fuel scarcity, financial disruption. Community health and safety, fire, hazmat, pandemic, civil disorder, active shooter, mass casualty, air quality. Infrastructure failure, gas leaks, sewer failure, power failure. And Ruth talked about this, we talked about this about community responsiveness. So it's a category on how to best engage, inform, and get the community involved. So those are the 6 or 7 categories that we're focusing on. And I can send you this, Brett. So
I mean, I've got this one.
that's exactly. Well, I do have updates, but I'll
Okay.
send everybody the updated copy after today.
Okay.
So I want to go through and just look at each of these asset categories quickly. Now, if you think of assets, it's not just equipment, it's people, places, things, training, whatever. And Brad, you had some good comments that other things that I've incorporated. We talked about a skills assessment. How many EMTs do we have in the community and things like that? So I want to run through each category and the assets that I have listed. And I want you to brainstorm and chime in your assets. What this will do is give us the sort of basis for a response.
Okay.
So that is our last category that we have to fill in. Then we can start to go back and fill in the things on the flip chart, which basically say, Javier, okay, if we have, let's say, a transportation emergency, here's the steps that you need to do. And the assets would be the contacts at like CSX, right? That's the local railroad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the contacts maybe at VDOT and other things, right? Rerouting traffic and alerting the county that this is going on, alerting surrounding counties. So think about sort of play that scenario a little bit out in your mind of what you would do and what assets we would need from a town perspective to respond to that incident.
Perfect.
So let's take the first one, severe weather. Let me run through the assets that I have listed. We have the levee system and the pump system. We have a levee manager who needs to be engaged. There needs to be a pump system contact, right, in case there's some mechanical failure with the pump. A VDOT contact. Power company contact if it's a severe weather emergency that knocks out the power, let's say. So severe weather, flooding, ice storm, freezing, high winds, thunderstorms, tornado, hail, snow blizzards, solar flares, extreme heat or extreme cold. Those are the incidents that are covered under this category. So communications contact, an internet provider contact number, CERT coordinator, CERT volunteers, right? So if people need to be evacuated, if traffic needs to be rerouted, if things need to be moved, if debris needs to be cleaned up. Medical volunteers, to your point that you've made in the past, road clearing contractors. So do we have somebody on call for snow plowing emergencies, right? P cards for first responders, so those are those gas cards or general cards that our first responders and police in particular can use to buy things. I did reach out to Ruth, providing me the contact at Bank of America who runs the P card system. I did contact her. She said that she forwarded my name and information to someone else. I have not heard back from them. I emailed her today to follow up, so this was about a week ago. I said, hey, I haven't heard from this person, can you get back with me? Or give me this person's contact information where I can follow up, so I'm waiting to hear back from her. A local gas cache, we talked about to make sure that there's some amount of fuel that if an emergency hits, you would call whoever our provider is to say, on alert, put this much fuel away for first responders, guaranteed, right? So we've talked about that. So we need that local gas cache in that contact. The county contact, so who does Javier contact in the counties of Albemarle, Savannah, Buckingham, maybe even Nelson? Transportation contact in the event of evacuation. Who's gonna move these people and how, right? If it's jaunt, if it's local volunteers, if it's what. So, and I have all this listed on my sheet, Javier, so I'll give this to everybody on the committee. There's an evac center coordinator. So if it's the school or if it's the community center, Nancy, whoever that is, you might need to say, hey, we need to put you on alert. We may have to evacuate people, be in the ring, right? Here's some things that I thought of after Helene and after our last discussion. A pet shelter contact. So who is going to take the pets, right? Because some people will not evacuate if they can't take their pets. And I think we established that the evacuation center will not keep the pets. So we need to have a pet shelter contact, pet carriers potentially, and pet tagging equipment, because we want to get the pets back to their original owners. I know that during Hurricane Katrina, people sort of surrendered their pets and had a hard time finding their pets afterwards. So if we had like a paper collar, like the wristbands they give you, like Kingston Minion, that we put around a collar, you get a number of pet and you get a number owner, and then we can tag them. We have a system with the pet sanctuary, wherever they're going to go, whether it's volunteers' homes, or it's a kennel of some sort, where they keep the pets, and we can actually track where each pet has gone. Cleanup equipment, shovels, chainsaws, ice melts, etc. We need a storage building for equipment, generator for town hall for continuity. We need potentially emergency heat system. If it's cold weather and people come here first as a shelter, we want to make sure that the building is heated and that the staff have heat so that they're protected while we're doing government continuity of operations. A media contact. So sometimes the media just comes in and interferes with what's going on. It would be nice maybe if we had a media contact to say, hey, we've got an incident here in town. We know you're going to be covering it, but here's how we work together. Right? I think we need to establish some of those relationships up front. And then a town credit card potentially. I don't know if you have one or if there's one in the office.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
different from P cards function.
Yeah, and it would be something that not just you could use, but you need a second coming in, right? You need a number two. So whether that's the mayor or Melody, whomever, you need to let the town know, and it should be on the flip chart. Javier's not available, he's out of town, this is number two, and back up to that. So those were, and this is the main category of assets that I have. This is the biggest list, because this is probably our highest risk, quite frankly. And some of these assets translate to the other categories, but not in the same length as this category. So any other thoughts on what we might need from a town perspective? We don't have all of these assets in place. I have starred the ones that we don't on here so that we can start working with town councils, future town councils to put some of these into the budget. To prioritize them and say, listen, guys, for continuity of operations, we need a generator. That's just the way it is, and so for the 25-26 budget cycle, I'm asking for $5,000 for generator, right? So, Brad or Javier, any other thoughts on the assets that we have that we need?
The only hole that I can really punch right now, and I mean, we can sit here and combine problems all day long, come up with the craziest, like, action movie sort of scripts, but. If we have one kind of disruption, likely that there's a really good chance we're also gonna have a disruption in communications,
Yeah.
right? So they fall in line.
That's
So I'm thinking specifically of like the P cards and stuff like that.
right,
We need to have like a cash on hand for
Right.
these emergencies that can almost, maybe not match the purchasing power of the P cards, because of course that's gonna be way more.
okay,
But at least something that we can gas up rigs, get people out and get people medical services. And that's gonna have to be literally hard to pull.
like a petty cash fund.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I had that under financial emergencies, is one of the things. But I should put it in here too.
I
I
mean,
think it's a good comment.
at least it's a, consideration, or at
Yeah.
least like a, hey. When the internet comes back, like an understanding with the gas stations and stuff around here, like, hey. When everything comes back up, we can pay for what we're taking, can we take this now and keep a ledger kind of thing?
Now, we have established, I think, that we have something, a relationship with ACE, I think, didn't Chief Jenkins say we had a
Yeah,
relationship
we
with
have
ACE?
a running account with them.
Okay.
And then, but we talked about, it's your action item, the medical cash. Going to writing and saying, hey, if we have an incident, can we, what medicines do you stock? What medicines should we have on hand? In a cash, can we alert you? Can you work with us in the event of an emergency? Have you followed that?
Not that, but I have a update on fuel.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
that's great.
that's great,
So-
Javier.
Greg and I met Tuesday with Gordon Sutton. So they're on board, so what they're looking at is, they're gonna have a discussion over at Tiger about setting some amount. They have a minimum, they have to keep their tanks up there.
Yeah.
They might increase the amount minimum, so then we have that wiggle room, and so when they start, God forbid something happens. They have to stop giving out fuel, there's at least that wiggle room for us.
Okay.
So if, let's say it's a 5% now, they would increase it to 10%. Go down to 5, and the remaining 5 would be the cash for us.
And then we would they would educate staff, hey, this is just for that.
Okay,
And
that's great.
So we still have to hash out the details. I think one thing, actually listening to that, we thought of it as just the amount there, but maybe part of the education is. Talking about like, what if we have an issue? Can we pay cash or can you keep a ledger for us? 'Cause we didn't discuss that and you just brought it up now. So it's maybe something as they start, that they gotta iron out the details. I'll mention that with Greg.
Well, and having Helene happen as horrible as it was, gave us a lot of food for thought, because when the communications went down, internet down. None of the credit cards would work, so even if you had a P card system, it didn't work.
Yeah.
So you either had to have, to your point, Brad, cash on hand. Or you had to have some kind of agreement, an IOU system, right? And even if you had cash on hand, one of the things, if we think about the community, what they said is to have small bills. So not
That makes sense.
big bills, so that if you only need $20 of gas, it's not like, well, we have hundreds.
Yeah.
And what do I do with the other? It's like,
Can't break-
I can't break it, I can't give you change, so forget, right?
Do we have an area in town where we have like, fuel blizzards or something with like stabilizer on hand? Probably not, maybe something way outside of our scope and you can tell me to stop, but like, just like a couple of fuel blizzards with diesel and gasoline. And fuel stabilizer to keep it stable, that maybe we could try and divert our. I've seen this in one system before, you filled up by these fuel blizzards, your fire trucks and your EMS. crew.
Yeah.
right? If they weren't on the road and had to go to a gas station.
Right,
That way the gas tank is cycling over, but they would fuel up the fuel blizzards instead of the trucks directly. That way we have a stock and reserve
right.
under lock and key somewhere, just a thing to think about, but it's not.
Well, what we talked about is, I believe what Greg said is that the volunteer fire company has them. They have a gas cache,
Okay.
but
Well,
that's for the fire department.
Yeah.
It's not for the police. So one of the things that Greg brought up the last time he was here, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, was that can we, now that the rescue squad legal aspect has been resolved, can we go back to them and say, hey, can you start working with us and can we forge a partnership? Because I think they have a gas cache, if you
Yeah.
will, for lack of a better term. And we might be able to work with them and it would be good to establish a better rapport with them anyway from a town perspective. Right, so I think, Javier, the way I see things right now from your role, a lot of this is going to be you kind of reaching out to these people to establish those relationships. And I think that's one of your superpowers. So you're really good at doing that. So when I have this list of contacts, I'm going to create a spreadsheet for you. And I want you to fill in names and numbers. Some of these you probably already have, like we talked about. You have the bat phone for Brightspeed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you need to write that down and that needs to go into our profile, right?
Yeah.
And it's confidential, it's not gonna be distributed wise, but
Yeah.
if for some reason you're not here, when your number two kicks in, it's in the plan.
I like what you're saying there, because I forgot about that, and I know where it is now, now that you mention, I'm like. But if it happens and I can't get in touch, somebody else needs to know where it is,
That's right.
cause it's just the EPC.
So this flip chart, and my term ends in December, but I'm hoping I can get at least some kind of draft by the end of the year. So I'll need everybody sort of on board just to get this filled in and then see if we can get it printed somewhere.
Okay.
So that we have something for you that gives you guidance, and not just you, but all those other people that you're working with, developing relationships with whether it's Gordon, to say, okay, who do I call Gordon if I need to, if you're able to establish this fuel cache, who do I call to say, okay, pull the trigger on this, we're in emergency mode, you're kick into that red light zone where you save us 5% of your fuel or whatever the number is.
Does it run when it's off grid? If there's no power, we have like a separate, all that kind of stuff that we can like set up later, yeah, for sure.
Because ideally, if we could get a draft plan together.
Mhm.
Then maybe I said originally spring, summer, but I think it'd be more summer, fall. What we could do is get all these partners that we've identified in a spreadsheet to the table and do a tabletop exercise. To say, okay, storm hits, power's out, communications out. There's a little bit of unrest, we've got elderly people to evacuate, kick in now. Okay, and then you go through and
Literally.
we can see what the gaps are in our preparedness plan and say, okay, I'm gonna call you. What are you gonna do? Right, then I'm gonna tag you back so that we have a smooth operation. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Can we, this may seem like a lot now, but like maybe in the future, can we codify that as like a quarterly exercise? Because this stuff's not gonna be fresh. And the wrinkles that end up happening over time aren't gonna get ironed if we don't continuously do this with different, like problems, issues, scenarios, But I think that's an amazing idea, crawl, walk, run, you have to crawl like tabletop and contact you, what are you doing, he's coming to him. How are we gonna get everyone there? I think that's,
Then you can go to live,
those are fun, but they're hard to set up.
they are,
They're
but that's why, to your point, baby steps.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Start with the tabletop. I don't know, quarterly seems,
Is that too much?
I think it's biannual, like semi-annual,
if we could do like 2 or 3 exercises
Two.
each time, like set aside an entire day or a half day to do that,
That's right.
I think that'd work.
Yeah, 2 times a year, just to run through the plan, make sure everything's current, review the scenarios, make sure there's no new scenarios that should be in there. You know, people have fought me on the trained around thing, but there was a trained around in Orange, there was a trained around in Nelson County. Not far from where we are, there, you know, there's been local trained derailments, now they may not have hazmat materials.
Yeah.
But they could potentially disrupt traffic, disrupt daily lives, businesses, and things like that. So we just don't know. So that's why we have the transportation. Okay, the next one, communication failure. We talked about Starlink, which would be the I think the gold standard of communication should something really big happen. Ham radios, UHF, VHF radios. FirstNet, AT&T has some kind of FirstNet system for first responders that I think the chief is already a part of. The GETS system, which I think the chief has said his team is part of. We still need to work out that alert notification system with Sunny at ECC. Javier, can you reach out to Sunny and see where we are with that? Can we get their system tailored just for Scottsdale? Because I'll tell you, I'm also on that pulse point, and I break it down into Albemarle County, you can't break it into Scottsville.
Yeah.
I get so much nonsense over that, that we're not concerned about.
For sure.
And that's the problem with not having a Scottsville
Like a local,
perspective.
you know,
Yeah.
get the river, yeah.
So, I mean, we're part of Albemarle County, if they could just do something a little bit more fine grained for Scottsville only, that would be really, really helpful.
Already good.
Okay, so anything else on communication? So we could, Brad, to your point, there's a lot of things in that first box that, you know, cash on hand, town on credit card, media contacts that we could use for communication failure too. So some of those assets could migrate over. But are there anything specific to communications failure that you would also say, yeah, that's also relevant here, or that is not on the list?
I guess going back to the original ham radio, the ARL thing, that also can include VHF and UHF. The only thing that I can think of that's related to that, and I'm not trying to be like, I'm not focused on one single point.
Sure.
We need a separate generator, preferably a 10K, which we could easily get. Do we have roof access?
Here, yeah.
Okay, so
Can
all,
you get through one?
Huh?
Can you get through one?
I mean, if you get someone spraying them.
Okay, alright,
I
that's
could-
easier, yeah.
So a small generator.
Small generator, little 10K thing, which you can get literally from the military for super cheap. Someone who knows how to run it, a secondary that knows how to run it, and both of them have their ham radio license and no UHF, DHF, you know, ARL, so.
So what do you do,
It's not-
send out the communication point on
Yeah.
rooftop?
So we have a standing antenna that's here and a permanently like, you know, permanently stationed generator up top. Someone who knows how to run that. And then in any room in here, along with a list of like, you know, stations to contact, things to consider. Just literally your transmitter receiver, your TXRX, and everything you need in one single room that's waterproof and preferably on the second level in case of floods. So that someone can like run down to City Hall, start the generator and start like communicating with people locally and, you know, within the, you know, surrounding counties. And then if it's low enough frequency, they could even do nationwide. Super easy to do and it'd actually be fairly cheap to set up.
Okay,
That's the only comment that I would.
okay, so what I'll put under the UHF, VHF radius is a rooftop antenna for town hall. And a small generator to run that system. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. If you guys would like, I could kind of set up like a on paper ad hoc system of like
Yeah.
what it would look like ideally.
That
That
would
was
be
the thing I was
great.
considering about.
That would be great, I would love to see that.
Okay.
Now, this also, sort of sparks my thinking on the community responsiveness, on engaging the community. Is that eventually, we might have to have some, I'll call it like a neighborhood watch. But that, like during Halloween, people had elderly neighbors or people that they knew were disabled, they would go over and check on them. So if we have people who have a hand radio license, we can also maybe ask them, can they form a zone where they communicate or check in on neighbors or something like this? This is not something we're gonna do right away.
No.
But I think it could be, like, we have various. What are the zones that Jack has the map of?
Evacuation.
Evacuation zones, we could maybe see if we could set up communication zones in those areas, because they're all kind of walkable.
Mhm.
And have a person who acts like, you know, fire drill chief, like when I was in corporate, right? You were the fire marshal for that floor, and you made sure everybody was evacuated and stuff like that. That you do that, somebody in that zone sort of has that role to go through and check on everybody and, you know, make sure they have what they need or they're okay or something like that. I mean, that's a longer term thing.
I don't think that would be too hard to, I don't mean, but
Yeah,
I don't think it would be too hard to establish. If you integrate that with CERT. The gentleman that was sitting here last time.
Wow.
Yes, he had a great idea. We all have like, you know, certain zones that are outside of floodplains that are safe. They have some kind of communication equipment. Maybe a sound goes off in town, so they know to turn on the radio, something, any kind of signifier to like, hey, go check on the neighbors. These people are safe and they know the neighbors, there are assigned neighbors to go check on.
That's
And then
right,
they can radio back, all my people are good.
right,
And literally it's not that hard. You just have to have willing volunteers.
Right.
That's it,
right, exactly.
you know,
And
and,
if we can leverage that, that's a perfect way to leverage CERT volunteers.
oh, yeah,
To
absolutely.
do that, you know, and. So they can help in evacuation or just wellness checks, you know, just making sure somebody's okay in the event of an emergency, even if we're not evacuating. You know, and to alert them, hey, communication lines are down, internet's down, it looks like it'll be out for 3 days. Food lines down, they're not gonna have food, are you okay, do you need it?
And it's a good way for like asymmetrical emergencies. This side of town is flooding, but not that side of town. So we're gonna check on these people. We really don't need to worry too much about these people. We're gonna radio the people over here. Okay, we do actually have a couple of residents that do need help, so we're gonna do some like evacuation efforts.
Well,
Makes
and we
sense.
have to know too, if any of those residents have. Equipment that they depend on for life support or other
CPAP,
things, yeah,
Oxygen.
or even medicines, right? So if they need diabetes medicines, but. Rite Aid's down, then you would kick in with your relationship with the Rite Aid person to say, hey, I need you to put so much of this aside for. Zone 3,
Yeah,
you know, we have an emergency in zone 3,
2 residents in the oxygen.
that's right,
Yeah, so-
that's exactly right.
One. Okay, I have a couple of, it's not like board specific, but if you're talking to Rite Aid, can I liaise with you about certain medications and certain considerations? Yeah. Okay. I'll do it here now. So-
Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Let's try to work on that. And you know, Brad, Javier is super busy,
I know,
so if you could
That's what-
take point on this and help
For sure.
Javier.
Yeah.
Be reminded, hey, let's set up the appointment. Javier, you can offload that to him if you want to set up the
Yeah.
appointment. Coordinate with your schedule and this and that, so you're not the only one doing it.
they
That
know
might be
well,
really
Rite Aid, I have to go forward with them, so if you wanna just say like, hey, he's actually an official person, I can actually talk to him about that. Okay.
Yeah, that's easy enough.
For sure.
EPC member.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
offloads you from that.
Yeah.
I feel bad because you are in the center of all of this, but
Yeah.
yet you're so busy. I don't want you to be burdened with it all, you know, so yeah, and I think Brad, that really falls well into your expertise, so that would be super helpful. All right, anything else on communications failure? Okay, transportation emergency, the 2 incidents I have covered, train derailment. And if Route 6 and Route 20 simultaneously close for some reason, Right, so traffic has to be rerouted, we have to alert county contacts, we should alert Buckingham. Don't send, try to reroute traffic away from 20 and 6 because we can't get through. What are those, well, we should have a sort of reroute map agreement, right, so if we have to reroute traffic from those surrounding counties, where do we want to go? Right, so if you can reach out to Fluvanna, if then you contact Buckingham, they can sort of go into their emergency zones and put up a reroute system around the 20 and 6 corridor. Does that make sense? Not making sense. So once you contact them, then it's their responsibility to sort of put that reroute in place. I don't know how VDOT plays into this, does it?
I'm not sure, no.
I think you're just, you can, yeah,
I'm gonna loop in Greg and ask, because he has a pretty good knowledge about. Just
Yeah.
traffic.
oh, yeah, that's his bad way, right?
'Cause, yeah, because I was thinking about when we had water coming over 20,
Mm-hmm,
and at some point it was the police chief, and then at some point it became VDOT, and it wasn't clear to me. I think it's like literally within the road.
and this is where, Javier, that alert notification system, that if you're on it, like for somebody like me. You can put out a notice, say, hey Sunny, can you post this? Route 20 and 6 are closed between this and this. I'm gonna alert my county counterparts to have them reroute traffic. But can we put out an alert notice to say this is an incident? And that way, anybody who's subscribing to that service can get an alert to say, heads up, traffic being rerouted.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, any other thing in transportation emergency? So I have message boards, traffic cones, county contacts. I just added a reroute map agreement with neighboring counties.
Jack told me that we do have dot matrix boards besides the one that are like the sheriff owns. Is that true? And are they big enough to be visible just in case?
I don't know
What's
that.
Dominic's board?
Message boards.
Yeah, little message boards are literally just individual ramps. You can put, personalized messages on them.
I don't know what the message board is. I don't know what that one is.
Well, we have the ones that Greg just saw.
Yeah.
He's got two,
So we've
But I
got
don't
one
think-
page.
for one for each side right now, we don't have more than that. He
No.
got it through a grant.
Okay,
But,
Like one's sitting up on 20.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah.
yeah,
You tell me what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
but it would be good to have 4. Because
Yeah,
1,
one,
2, 3, 4, right, coming in from Nelson, coming in from Fluvanna, Buckingham, Albemarle. So, one of the things we might want to think about, Javier, is Greg doing another grant for 2 more message boards in the future, you know?
Maybe if it's an ask, like, I don't know how granular, I think in the past, we asked the county. So like for 4th of July, we'd be borrowing, that's what we used to do.
Yeah, but we can't rely on that anymore.
Yeah.
If it's a county one, they won't have it available.
They'll be using
So then, back to the point,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have 2 and then it might be nice to have 4.
for
Yeah.
sure.
4 would cover us for sure.
But I mean, 2's good, so
2's better than none.
2's better than that.
Which is what we had the year before last. Okay, so anything else on transportation? Okay, we've got 10 minutes. Supply chain disruption. This covers food scarcity, fuel scarcity, and a financial disruption. There's a cyber attack on the local banking system and they're all down and nobody can get cash. Okay, so that's the kind of scenario we're talking about. So, I also have churches in some of these mixes because in food scarcity, so I have it under an asset and supply chain disruption. The churches can act, what we found with Helene is churches were a great place for food distribution. People knew generally where they were.
They seek them out when there's an issue, you know?
Exactly, so I have churches, local media supply cash, so that's that Rite Aid, cash, petty cash funds, so if. Cash registers, POS systems are down, we have a way to buy. CERT coordinators, CERT volunteers, food bank coordinators, because we they're used to packaging food and distributing food. So they would be a great asset to work with the local churches on food distribution if we needed it. Food provider contacts, so Dollar General, Food Line, Tiger Market. Would all be really good if everything shuts down, so maybe before they throw things away, because they're in the freezer, can we distribute it locally, that kind of thing, those are the kinds of questions that you want to ask them. Local bank contacts, so if something does happen with the banking system, you're in contact with them, they know who to call locally to say, hey, we've got an incident. People in town or in the general area won't be able to access cash via number.
Okay.
Fuel cash, town credit card, alert notification system. So those are the things I have under supply chain disruption. People, places, things, anything else you can think of in those categories?
I know I can contribute some of those contacts already. So I
Yeah,
know those, and then it's just a station,
yeah,
but it's simply. Preparing one things. I think I never really thought.
Okay.
Cases.
well, like I said, I'm gonna put together a spreadsheet of those. And I'll ask you to fill out what you have,
Yeah.
and then we can work on the gaps.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I
Right.
was thinking.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a couple of ideas, but
Yeah.
I'll put it in that spreadsheet. if it's-
Okay,
Or as an email.
community health and safety. So this includes fire, hazmat, pandemic, civil disorder, active shooter, mass casualty, air quality. I have as assets, local medical supply, local EMT spread, post-trauma response and site counseling. I think that was maybe your comment from the last discussion.
Like a mass casualty or.
Yeah, I have it starred here as assets that we don't have in place, but I've listed it that we should have something in place.
Okay.
A local LZ, a landing zone, we know we have a public one, but we talked about a private one.
Mhm.
And then churches and an alert notification system. One thing with Helene that we found out was. And I should put this on here, the CERT teams were used for, a health and status checks.
Yeah.
So somebody says, I can't get in touch with my mother, she lives by herself, she's 85 years old, and I'm beside myself. Rather than calling the police department, we would have that coordinated maybe through CERT.
Okay.
And CERT would go into their zones and do those wellness checks in their zones. And be responsible to report back to the
Yeah,
family
that's
members
awesome.
who,
Yeah.
whomever,
Yeah.
but we would need a process for that. So, in terms of the CERT volunteer, pool, Brad. Let's start thinking about how we would leverage CERT volunteers in that way.
Mhm.
And do we have enough CERT volunteers to cover our zones? To act as point persons, that kind of thing. Does that sound reasonable, Javier?
Yeah, I think so.
Because that way you're working with the CERT coordinator. The CERT coordinator then says, okay, zone leaders, you're on point, right? We have this emergency, wellness checks, standby for evacuation. And you only have like one person to deal with, right? That the volunteers should be prepared for these scenarios of wellness checks, potentially evacuation, debris cleanup, traffic rerouting. Those are all the scenarios that I think we could really use the help of CERT volunteers.
Okay.
And of course, I want to emphasize that CERT volunteers are not operating autonomously. Right? They are working in conjunction and at the direction of our town emergency coordinator, who is Javier. Javier is working with first responders like Chief Jenkins and whatnot, and getting recommendations and direction from them as well.
The only comment that I would say about that, and it's not something that I've actually seen enacted yet at this point with the CERT, is that is going to take training. And the reason for that is people will take over on their own recognizance if they think that they're operating in the right context, even when they're not. So it's gonna take
Yeah,
whoever is in charge of search
yeah,
time to pull them in and be like, hey, this is how everything breaks down, this is the hierarchy. You cannot operate with it without this context here. And the reason for that, it's really important to know, like, hey, my sector is good, I'm sorry, I'm trying to take time. My sector is good, you don't need resources here, or I need these very specific resources without like cataloging about certain things that they don't need. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
right. No, that's,
Appreciate it.
yeah, I think that's a good comment, right? So, and you know, this is why we're all here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, infrastructure failure. I have things like ACSA contact, Rivana, water authority contact,
Mhm.
gas company contact, power company. Yeah, so those you would fill in your spreadsheet, they're pretty, and then the last one on community responsiveness. I have the message boards that we have, the alert system. Preparedness packet. I think we should start to think about what we want to send out to the community about what they should have. And think about what are those things we can have with them. I was just looking at, when I was talking about the pets, I was just looking up on stickers that you put on your windows, and I've seen them before for like first responders to say, I have a pet here. In the event of an emergency, can you please rescue my pet?
Yeah.
Right? There's emergency pet identification systems that people can put on their pets so that there's cards that if they get in a car accident, they can say, I have a pet alone at home. Please call this emergency number to take care of my pet in the event I'm incapacitated. So if we have some kind of emergency down here where people are incapacitated, we have a way to put their mind at ease that their pets are being taken care of, and this is that pet tracking system.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna continue to look at that, because I think that's, you know, we all get attached to our pets, right? That would be one of my first, if my family's safe, and the next year down, is year down.
Oh, they're family.
Yeah, right, and my pets, okay. And so these are the kinds of things we could put in a flyer or potentially get a grant to provide through the town for emergency preparedness. So Javier, we have the $5,000 for E911 signs. We talked about using some of that for community awareness. We might want to build into that some kind of pet tracking systems, like we could buy 50 of them and say, if you want a free tracking system for your pet, stop by the town office and the town will provide it as part of that preparedness E911 funding. We might be able to use that for that. So then we have E911 signs, we purchased those, right? Then we were gonna do an E911 flyer for people to come get the E911 signs if they want it.
Yeah.
And we could use, if there's funding left over, and you have to tell me how much funding we have left, we could have those pet kits to say, hey, you know, come. You know, in an emergency, pets are part of our family. There are pet tagging kits at the office that you can come and get for free. And that's, again, another good thing to report back to, what was the grant place you got?
CACF.
That, no. Bomber.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right, that we can report back to them as how we used that fund. Does that sound reasonable?
For sure, I see some people, a lot of people don't like to get tracked on small metric data that like out of paranoia. So we can make it compulsory, like, hey, we have these kids, if in an emergency you have to leave your house with your pet. We can tag, I mean, this all I do is I can throw an email,
Well-
and then have a registry if they want to,
Well, yeah,
does that make sense?
no, and I'm not even talking about a registry.
Okay.
I'm not talking about tracking people's pets, but
Sure.
I'm talking about, there's tags for your pet, emergency cards you put in your wallets
Okay.
with an emergency contact to take care of your pet if you're indisposed. Things for your windows,
Gotcha.
tags on their collars, I belong to so and so. So let me show you what I saw. Um,
See the sticker on the bar.
Yeah, I've seen them in windows rarely,
Yeah.
but I have seen them in windows.
So here's an example.
Mhm.
Right, it's not tracking, it just said, I have 2 cats inside, please rescue my cats in the event of an emergency.
Yeah.
Right, so there's these kinds of tagging systems, and they have emergency cars, here's key tags, wallet cards. So there's a whole system like this, right? So you get the window sticker, the tagging system on your pet, the emergency card for your wallets. This is not being tracked, it's just for you to ensure that your pet's as safe as they can be, that the town's providing free of charge. These are a 10-pack for $8, right? So they're cheap,
Yeah, so
right?
I can put some more comments in an email. The thing that I'm thinking is maybe include 1 or 2 of those in our stock, like, Eric, hey, here's your emergency kit for everyone in town if you take it.
Yeah,
So
I
it'd be
love that.
2 separate lines of grants, but we put it together in 1 package.
Yeah,
And I
love
can start doing grant research on it.
I love that. I really, I
Yeah.
think that's great. That's great. Okay, so we're out of time. I want to respect everybody's time. Is there anything else? I will send this updated spreadsheet to everyone. Please just give it a, as you kind of noodle on this in the background, just give it some thought. Look through it one more time in a day or 2 and see if there's anything else that I might be missing.
Mhm.
And we can add it. We say you've had some thoughts already.
Yeah.
Just send it out to the group.
Okay.
Javier, we can get that
Yeah.
group together.
For sure.
And then, I'll keep the master.
All right.
And bring it back next time for one final thing, as we move into, okay, now we've got the assets, we've got our main incidents, what are our responses? All right. Okay, everybody, thank you for your time, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Oh,
Thanks, nice seeing you.
yeah, it's good. So I'm actually gonna be more engaged.
Yeah, glad you're back.
Thank you very much.
Not, I've left this on overnight.